Hello and welcome to my August video for 2024. And today's topic is rising above black and white thinking. So I'm super excited to be bringing this message through today, which is extremely relevant and important to our psychology in general, and specifically addresses implicitly the situation that we're facing in our relationships and the society at large, really. And so I feel this message has a unique relevance to the times that we're living through right now. And that's my hope, is that this will support you to gain a little insight perhaps into your own psychology, the psychology of others, and navigate the landscape with as much mastery and grace and clarity as possible. Okay, so rising above black and white thinking. So, okay, first of all, let's just look at what is black and white thinking. Why do we default to this mode sometimes, etc.? So black and white thinking is really a state of perception, a state of being in which a person is oriented towards a situation or an experience or a thought process from the standpoint of black and white thinking. So from the standpoint of it's either this or it's this. Okay, black and white. There's A or there's B. There's black or there's white. Okay, so black and white thinking is just a metaphor for it could be anything on either side of the equation, but it's like splitting reality, which is extremely diverse, and truly everything is on a continuum of moving from one extreme to another in the realm of duality. But we psychologically can get into a state of being in which we are breaking reality down into very, very simple terms. Okay, so that's what we call black and white thinking. Now, again, just zooming out and looking at the big picture, well, we have black and white thinking, and sometimes it is actually a helpful structure to make decisions and sort things out, because it is a world of duality that we're living in. Okay, so the whole thing around black and white thinking comes from the fact that we are living in a world of duality, and that there are polar opposites within this world, within this realm. So there's hot and there's cold, for example, right? There's, with color, black and white are the two opposites on polar ends of a spectrum. You can think of many, many examples, okay? So everything that we orient to in this world, most things are on some kind of a spectrum of a polarized opposites, right? So that's the world of duality, which is this world we're living in of name and form. And so there's a truth to that. Yes, there are these polar opposites. There's hot, there's extreme hot, and there's freezing, extreme cold. Let's just use the temperature as the most easy example to work with here. So yes, so there are extreme opposites in this world, okay? But and there can be times when it can be meaningful to see that, and to see there's good and there's evil, or whatever you want to call it. There's dharma and there's adharma. Those are the Sanskrit words for good, what we would call good and evil. Okay, so there's value in seeing that there's a difference, that there's a multitude of different things going on here, and that one way we can look at things in the polarized sense is that there are these opposites. There's hot and there's cold. Okay, it just is. Okay, so that's just the the landscape of our experience is that there are polar opposites, and that's just part of the reality. However, in the reality of the situation, there are shades of gray and shades of temperature, okay, between the polar opposites in any situation. So when we get into black and white thinking, what that means is that we've split into a way of simplifying things by, okay, this person is over here in this camp and this person's over here in this camp. End of story. Okay, whatever. We could look at it with race, we could look at it with every aspect of life. There's a continuum, truly, and there is nothing but complexity and diversity in the actual way that things are manifested. So, for example, in an actual person, in a human being, okay, it's shades of gray. It's really an infinite spectrum, truly, of complexity and of diversity and of a complex recipe for what an individual human being or situation is, what's actually going on. Okay? And so my hope here is to help us understand more this tendency to default into a black and white mode of thinking, to collapse reality into this simplified structure, which, yes, makes it easy to orient oneself in a certain way. It's very concrete. It's very simple. I know who I am, and I know who these other people are. Okay? And so, the point is that the reality is much more of a spectrum on any particular, issue, on any particular thing in society, right? Anything, temperature, right? Temperature of water. There's how many shades of gray, how many shades of in between hot and cold are there, right? Can we actually even count them? No, we can't, because it's truly infinite. There's so much variation, okay? And so, let me take another step back and let's look at, okay, what is this black and white thinking psychologically, and how does it play into our psychology, etc. So in psychology, as many of you know, I'm sure, there are what we call ego defenses. So as we develop as an individual, just in a natural way, the ego structure will develop what we call ego defenses as mechanisms that help the ego maintain a sanity, basically, maintain a sense of cohesion, coherence, a sense of orientation. That's what the ego is. It's a sense of orientation to myself, both in relationship to the external world and in relationship to my internal world, to my own psyche, my own inner landscape. So that's really, in a nutshell, what the ego structure is. And so what happens as that ego structure develops, just through childhood, it develops these different levels of types of defenses, right? Which are healthy to the degree that we require these in order to maintain sanity, at relative as the best our ego can possibly do, given whatever we're dealing with. And so these actually are healthy and adaptive strategies that we need and are good and are extremely brilliant, actually, and intelligent structures. And so it's just that then once we become fully grown and adults and we've survived, we've made it to adulthood, then they become the traps, right? The egoic traps that keep us kind of stuck in a certain bandwidth, keep us unconscious, and actually, sort of not functioning at our highest level ultimately, until we do the work of seeing all this and working through it and seeing our patterns and seeing how and why we have these structures and how to heal them and release them, so we can be more fully adult and more fully high functioning psychologically. So the reason why I'm saying all of this is because we're looking at the black and white thinking. So there's basically a developmental stage in which we develop that sense of black and white thinking. It's an orientation. It's a structure. Okay? It's a part of relating to the world and making sense of the world. And some things are painful, some things are pleasurable, right? That's another polarization. Some things are safe, where my needs are being met, and some things are unsafe, where I'm threatened. Okay? So the black and white thinking is really a natural aspect of orienting to the world, because it's an aspect of the world, right, that we have to orient to, and it is part of the landscape. But so we learn how to categorize. Okay, this is pleasure, this is pain. I mean, all these things are real. Melanie Klein, one of the kind of theorists in the field from earlier last century, talked about this in terms of the good breast and the bad breast, which is an interesting, funny psychological term that we would all laugh about, of course, in graduate school. But this is an example. It's called splitting, right? So this is where we are splitting the world into good and bad, in this case, right? The good breast is the loving mother, the mother who's there to meet my needs and is, there to feed me my milk when I need it, etc. The bad breast is the neglectful mother, the mother who isn't meeting my needs, who isn't interpreting what I need and giving it to me. So it's that's kind of the psychological piece, this particular theory is, and she talks, Melanie Klein, a lot about this defense. It's all about understanding this particular psychological orientation as we get into adulthood as an ego defense. So, okay, so hopefully you're following me here. I know I'm just kind of going deep into some pieces, but the point is I'm just trying to help us to see that this state of being of black and white thinking is a natural part of our development. It's healthy, and it's a way of orienting to reality, the reality that we do live in this world of these two opposites. And so, okay, so getting to the main point here, what happens as we are adults, okay, and we're trying to orient to a very complex landscape in life, which we are uniquely in the midst of an extremely complex, mind-spinning experience that we're trying to all make sense of in this life, in this world. And so as we are trying to navigate a complex landscape and make sense of what's going on and orient ourselves to what to ourselves and what do we believe, what's going on here, who am I, how do I relate to other people in this very complex landscape? And a landscape in which it's the question of what is real, what is true, what's actually going on, who's who, who do I trust, all these things, right? We are everybody is challenged to orient themselves, to make sense of it, to find a position, an orientation, okay? It's extremely disorienting. So we're all working and struggling every day as things continue to unfold, we're struggling to continue to orient to new information, to new events happening, to a changing, extremely volatile and changing landscape on every level. Socio-politically, with the severe weather events, all the things. Okay, we all know what they are. So therefore, what happens when we are faced with complexity, with a threat, okay, especially things that are threatening, what happens is for people, depending on our level of development and consciousness and self-awareness and all these things, and even, it doesn't matter, like anyone at any level of development can go into this mode of the black and white thinking. But depending on our level of development and just self-awareness, we are more or less prone to easily default into this mode of thinking, into this black and white thinking, orientation template, right? It's an orientation template is what it is. It's an orientating template that splits reality into two camps. Okay, whatever the issue is, whatever the situation is, it splits reality into A and B as an orienting template. Okay? And so this is the key, okay? And again, this is also talked about as an ego defense as well. So I want to really kind of weave that through. So it's an orienting template, which is ultimately a defensive orientation. It's an ego defense that is trying to make me feel safe and oriented in a situation that's A, threatening, and B, extremely complex and unclear and confusing, which also is threatening when something can't be understood. So all these things are all forces in the field which invite a person in response psychologically to root into this very, really primitive mode of being, this primitive psychological state of being and orientation, which is this black and white thinking. Okay, it's called splitting. It's a defensive structure that's very primitive in terms of compared to other ego defenses that are much more complex, right? So, but it is an ego defense, and I want to emphasize that because it's helpful to understand that even in ourselves, and then trying to understand other people's behavior as well, that when people are in a state of threat and there's confusion about what's going on, they will revert into this black and white thinking as a way of feeling safe. Like, okay, as long as I know that I'm in camp A and I know that I'm good and I'm right, and I can clearly see this is camp B over here, who's wrong, who I'm against. So it's the template of, you're either with us or against us. It's the template of, me or you. One of us is going to win and one of us is going to lose. And I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure I'm the winner. There's not enough resources for all, so we have to fight for it. So this is really what it is that when a person feels threatened and overwhelmed and confused, they will revert to this black and white thinking as a structure that helps them feel safe and oriented. Okay? And it happens to be that coming from that place is extremely limited and actually is limiting us from being able to perceive a landscape that is actually extremely complicated. And other people, okay, regardless of whatever their beliefs are, whatever their lifestyle is, whatever, whatever another person is as an individual, is extremely complex and has their own inner subjective life and experience that is complicated. And yes, there are these tribal camps, whether it be political or religious, and all of it's kind of lumped in this sort of political ideology system where there's this set of things over here and this, and it just happens that they happen to all the points are opposite. All the core issues are exactly opposite and extreme. They're polarized. Okay. The two camps are polarized on a set of issues or beliefs. And many people subscribe to one camp or another. Okay? Again, going back to black and white, color-wise, okay, people are subscribing to one or the other and they're opposite to each other. Okay, people who are identified in this particular way, yes, you can, if they are identified as that and you are identified as the other, then it can be it can be seductive to just see that other person through that lens of this other. Oh, I'm A and you're B. That's all you are to me is B right now. That's all you are, and I know who you are, and you're against me, and I'm, in a fight with you for who's going to win. I mean, so the whole point here is to encourage each of you to understand this and look at it in ourselves. If we are stuck in this black and white thinking, we are truly not seeing the situation for what it actually is. We're not seeing other people for who they actually are. Literally are projecting onto the other person based from your black and white thinking perspective. Okay? And as long as, even to a greater or lesser degree, we are perceiving reality through this template, we are missing a much bigger and complex picture that is going on. Okay? And, obviously I'm implicitly speaking to the current landscape of the heightened energies around this in the United States, but around the world, but particularly in the United States. It's like the apex, I think, right now for a lot of this type of a battle mindset and this black and white thinking, which so many people are stuck in, unconsciously even, okay? So I really want to emphasize this point again, that if we are unconsciously rooting into this black and white thinking template, which is where we split reality into two opposite things, and then as an orienting structure. It's an orienting structure to a 3-year-old who is growing up in a world of duality, because these archetypes of hot and cold and pleasure and pain are real. They're part of the world. So it's a natural, healthy thing to do. And to know one from the other, And so that's natural. But then we continue to develop and we realize, hopefully, that the world is actually much more complicated and there's infinite shades of gray between black and white. So if we are stuck, if we are unconsciously rooting into that on whatever the things may be in the world, then we are not seeing the whole picture and we're not seeing other people accurately. Okay? So this is very powerful and important, and it's just an important part of our psychological and spiritual development, just in general. But right now, navigating the level of complexity and threats, that are, or perceived threats perhaps, but, also real threats, right? With all that's going on with the wars and everything, right? So again, when we're threatened and we're in a world where we don't understand what's going on, we're overwhelmed, we will revert people who don't have other ways of orienting at a higher frequency, at a higher level. We will tend to revert to that fear-based orientation where this is what makes me feel safe. And then everybody has their own trauma too, right? Where then that's where we go with our trauma as well, is into black and white thinking in order to feel safe. But as long as we're doing that to whatever extent, we truly, first of all, it doesn't work. It doesn't keep us safe at all. And it creates a limit on our capacity to actually see what's going on, to actually, do good and be a contributor and be helpful. It's a position that is extremely low vibration and dense, and of the vibration of violence, ultimately, if it just depending on the level of intensity. Okay, and we see this playing out in violent ways already, and there's probably more to come. But we don't have to participate in that vibration. We have the power and we have the capacity to rise above a black and white template, a splitting, and just seeing this, you're either with me or against me mentality, or there's only enough for one of us here mentality. We're not seeing the truth of actually what's going on, and we are in basically a frequency of lack of violence, okay? A frequency that can be violent, whether it's, words, violence with words, violent thoughts, like, whatever they are, okay? So when I say violence, our thoughts, when we're thinking negatively and even maliciously against another group or another human, that's a frequency of violence. And then it's perpetuating that in our own lives and in the world at large. So it's really critical that we see this for what it is. And then we're able to choose something differently, right? More heart-based. And see the complexity of other people, to see the complexity of the landscape, and to break out of the trance of this template of splitting reality into just two solid things. It's either this or it's this. Okay? And then we're able to actually be more in our mastery and able to find a different orientation, okay, that might be uncomfortable, but more real, maybe perhaps more, seeing the situation more clearly, and able to then find our orientation of how we need to be, how can we be a contributor, how can we participate, how can we find safety and security within ourselves when we're raising our frequency higher. Then we feel better, and we are using our prefrontal cortex, and we're more high functioning, we're creative, we're loving, we're building relationships in spite of, differences even, right? So that's the message. I'm going to leave it here for now. Rising above black and white thinking. I hope this is helpful, and I wish you all many blessings, and I will be back next month. Okay, bye for now.